In a quiet Alabama suburb, the roar of motorcycle engines shattered the stillness, announcing the arrival of trouble. A pack of leather-clad bikers, notorious for terrorizing neighborhoods, thought they had the perfect target, a gentle old woman named Althea, who always wore a warm smile and carried a small paper bag of groceries in her arms. They assumed she was helpless, just another easy victim to humiliate for cheap thrills. Little did they know, Althea held secrets from a life filled with astonishing skill, untold influence, and the kind of resilience only adversity can forge when her hidden past erupted into the present. Everyone was left speechless. A gentle afternoon. Sun cast a soft glow over the modest neighborhood in Birmingham, Alabama. The air carried the faint aroma of fresh-cut grass, mixed with the tang of barbecue smoke drifting from backyard grills. Lined with oak trees that had borne witness to countless seasons, these streets were dotted with single-story houses painted in pastel shades of cream, blue, and pink. The yards were often small, but lovingly kept fresh flowers on porches, wind chimes singing in the breeze. It was the kind of neighborhood where folks waved from their driveways, children rode bicycles until sunset, and elder neighbors swapped recipes over the fence. At the corner of Azalea Drive and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard stood a small community church, Grace and Glory Baptist, with its chipped white steeple pointing to the heavens. Not far from it was a Kroger supermarket, one of the real modern fixtures in a town that often clung to its classic Southern charm. Many of the town's elders would recall times when the store sold groceries out of a single aisle, and you knew every cashier by name. Times had changed, but in many ways they'd also stayed the same. Here the unstoppable forward motion of progress coexisted with old traditions. Beneath the friendly wave and polite smiles, however, were deeper currents. Certain prejudices never fully left. Whispers circulated among some folks who longed for the past, while others prayed for continued improvement. The city still carried the ghosts of a turbulent history. Birmingham was central to pivotal moments in the civil rights movement. For every step forward, there remained reminders of the struggle. Yet in this pocket of the city, people tried to forge on, peacefully upholding a neighborly spirit. Every Sunday after morning, church service families gathered in the park for potluck lunches. Once a month, a farmer's market brought fresh vegetables, local honey, and warm baked goods to eager residents. The local barbecue joint, Rusty's Rib Shack, was a cherished fixture that drew lines out the door on Saturday nights. Life flowed gently with small dramas and minor triumphs, weaving a tapestry of communal existence. Althea Robinson was the quiet soul at the center of many hearts in this neighborhood. At 73 years old, she was lean but never frail. Her back still held erect with dignified posture. She had a ready laugh, eyes that glimmered with warmth, and a voice that carried the comforting timbre of an experienced storyteller. Althea wore her silver-grey hair in gentle waves that crowned her face. A Sunday hat perched on her head whenever she went to church. But on weekdays, she donned a simple, wide-brimmed straw hat to shield herself from the Alabama sun. While she tended her garden, she loved her roses and azaleas, which she grew in neat rows around her small, cozy bungalow. A framed collage of family photographs adorned her living room wall, each snapshot a testament to the love and legacy she had cultivated. Her late husband James had passed away some 6 years earlier. He was a decorated Army veteran who'd served in Vietnam. Beneath his uniform was a heart that beat passionately for family and justice traits that had kept Althea strong through her own challenges. It was James who taught Althea how to balance compassion with firmness, how to stand tall when threatened. He'd always said, Don't let anyone mistake your kindness for weakness. She took that advice to heart. What few people knew was that Althea had her own extraordinary background. In her youth, she was part of a special volunteer group that trained in hand-to-hand self-defense as local communities fought for their civil rights. The group had quietly prepared themselves for protests for nights when freedom marches could turn deadly, and for the everyday racism that lurked on street corners. She learned to protect herself, and after a while, she grew so adept that she began training others. Yet Althea rarely boasted of these skills. She saw them as tools for protecting the vulnerable, not for glorifying herself. Over the years, her adeptness in martial arts, particularly a unique blend of street defense techniques and formal judo, faded into memory. She had not actively practiced for decades. Age and a peaceful life lulled those formidable abilities into dormancy. But her mental acuity never dulled. Althea was also an accomplished mathematician who once worked as an assistant at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, another secret piece of her life that barely came up in casual conversation. She had contributed to calculations for satellite trajectories, though the official records often minimized the roles of women of color. Still, she was proud of her behind-the-scenes work. She carried that quiet pride into her unassuming daily existence, watering her roses, sharing a slice of homemade sweet potato pie with her neighbors, and sending her grandchildren thoughtful cards on their birthdays. When she ventured out to buy groceries or visit a friend, she moved slowly but with purpose. She used a simple wooden cane carved with flowers and vines, more out of caution than necessity. The local children found her gentle manner endearing. They knew she would pay them $1 for every weed they plucked from her garden, or offer them a home-baked cookie when their parents allowed it. Everyone believed they knew. Althea kind, sweet, a living reminder of the better parts of tradition. But beneath that mild exterior lay a spirit that had faced down injustice many times before. Age and time had rendered her content, not complacent. She had seen the worst the world could offer, and she had endured. While neighbors took comfort in their routines, a dark edge had begun to encroach on their serenity. A biker gang calling themselves the Iron Thunder word had spread, that they were not just your ordinary motorcycle enthusiasts. They prided themselves on intimidation tactics. With their black leather vests emblazoned with a coiled serpent and a clenched fist, they were anything but subtle. They tore through quiet neighborhoods, revving their Harley-Davidsons, intentionally setting off car alarms, and sometimes cornering teenagers who lingered outside too late. It was also rumored they had ties to a regional extremist group, though no one could confirm it. Town gossip alleged the Iron Thunder's leader, a man called Drake Fang Merriman, had spent time in prison for assault. Some said his knuckles were tattooed with cryptic symbols referencing white supremacist ideology. Local businesses were terrified to refuse them service. They'd swagger into the local gas station mini-mart and walk out with armfuls of snacks, ignoring the register and the quivering clerk. A few times bold townsfolk complained to the police, but by the time an officer arrived, the gang had roared off down the highway. No arrests, no consequences. Fear settled into the hearts of many residents. Some tried to avoid being outdoors when the bikers came around. Curfew-like patterns emerged. Families hurried inside at the first sign of revving engines. The city council convened behind closed doors, desperate to figure out how to handle the infiltration. But with limited resources and a battered local economy, they found themselves in a stalemate, hoping the gang would tire of this new territory and leave on their own. Yet the Iron Thunder grew bolder. In parking lots and on street corners, they'd pick random targets for humiliation. Young men, older citizens. It didn't matter as long as they could leverage fear. Their only apparent rule was not to cross certain lines that might trigger a massive statewide response, so they skirted just on the edge of the law, leaving no conclusive evidence for major arrests. Whispers reached Althea's ears from friends at church. "Don't go out after 5 p.m., Miss Althea. Stay safe," they'd say, helping load groceries into her trunk. She accepted their concern graciously, but her gentle smiles betrayed no fear. Deep inside, she despised bullies she always had, yet her sense of caution told her to remain watchful. Not reckless. Little did the gang suspect that beneath Althea's calm exterior lurked the kind of resilience and skill that could turn their entire operation upside down. It was only a matter of time before their paths crossed, setting off a chain of events that would ripple through the community. It was a warm Wednesday afternoon when Althea decided to pick up some milk, fresh vegetables, and a bouquet of flowers from Kroger. She moved unhurriedly through the aisles, greeting neighbors, offering a light-hearted compliment to the produce clerk who was stacking peppers. She had on a simple lavender dress and her favorite pair of sensible shoes polished to a respectable shine. At checkout, the young cashier, Mariah, chatted with Althea about her hopes to attend nursing school. Althea offered words of encouragement, urging Mariah to persevere despite her family's financial struggles. She remembered her own days of striving to find scholarships and working late hours to pay for her education. As Althea made her way to the parking lot, a deep rumble in the distance caught her attention. 6 roaring motorcycles snaked into the lot, each carrying a figure wrapped in black leather. The leader, Fang, was unmistakable. Tall, broad-shouldered, with long, greasy hair tucked under a half-helmet. His arms were covered in tattoos, some of them fading, others freshly inked. The rest of his crew fanned out behind him, forming a semicircle as they parked near Althea's modest sedan. Across the lot, a few shoppers froze in place. Others ducked behind cars, praying to remain unnoticed. Althea's heart rate quickened as she recalled how bullies could escalate from mild harassment to violence with little provocation. She steadied herself. One of Fang's men, a bearded giant named Bricks, spotted Althea and let out a laugh. "Hey Fang, look who we got here. Lil' old granny, all alone." Althea pretended not to hear. She steadily placed her groceries in the trunk, refusing to let her hands tremble. She silently reminded herself, "Keep calm. Show no fear." Fang revved his engine, inching the massive motorcycle closer to her. The gang moved in formation, blocking the lane between parked cars. Pedestrians who might have intervened found themselves paralyzed by intimidation. "Afternoon, ma'am," Fang said, his voice dripping with mock politeness. "Mighty fine day for a stroll, ain't it?" Althea looked up, meeting Fang's gaze with a polite smile. "Yes, sir. It sure is a lovely day." The gang erupted in laughter at the sight of this mild-mannered senior citizen addressing Fang with such composure. Another biker, a woman with a rattlesnake patch on her vest, sneered. "Don't be fooled by that polite tone. We gotta make sure she knows who's boss around here." Althea closed her trunk. She reached for her cane, leaning on it, as she started walking around her car to the driver's seat. "If you'll excuse me, gentleman and lady, I need to be on my way." Bricks put a heavy boot on the pavement, blocking her path. "Not so fast, Granny." "Why the hurry? Don't you want to spend a little time with us?" Althea tried not to roll her eyes. She glanced at his boot and then back up at his eyes. "I don't like to keep my stew simmering on the stove for too long," she said calmly. Fang chuckled. "Stew, huh? So you're a cook. Maybe you can whip us up something." The gang howled as if this were the funniest idea in the world. Althea could smell the acrid stench of stale beer emanating from their clothes. She sensed the tension building among them. This was typically the moment they tried to escalate. In the old days decades ago, Althea would have diffused a moment like this swiftly. Now she weighed her options carefully. She could attempt a bold self-defense if they laid a hand on her, but for now, they were only words and intimidation. Another part of her recalled the principle, never let them isolate you if you can help it. The parking lot was relatively open, but they still tried to box her in. Suddenly, a store security guard noticed the commotion and stepped out. He was young, slender, and unarmed, except for a radio. Althea felt a pang of apprehension for him. He seemed out of his depth. "Hey!" the guard shouted, voice shaking slightly. "Leave her alone." Brix turned around, eyes narrowed. Or what he spat. The guard froze, hand hovering near his radio. "I'll call the police." Fang revved his motorcycle, smirking. "Go ahead, rent-a-cop. The police around here take forever. You want to do your job, or do you want to live to see tomorrow?" The threat hung in the air, thick as summer humidity. The guard glanced at Althea, then back at the gang, visibly torn about how to proceed. After a tense moment, he stepped back, shoulders sagging. He had to weigh his personal safety against a job that didn't pay nearly enough for this kind of confrontation. Althea exhaled slowly. "Let the young man be," she said to Fang. "He's only doing what he thinks is right." Fang laughed, a menacing sound. "And you're telling me what to do, old lady?" She smiled, just asking for consideration. "That's all." For a brief second, Fang seemed almost uncertain. Her dignity had a disarming effect. Nonetheless, he put on a sneer. "You're lucky we're in a good mood, or we'd make you regret that tone." With a signal from Fang, the gang gunned their engines in unison, the thunderous noise reverberating off the asphalt and store windows. They peeled out of the lot, leaving a swirl of dust and exhaust behind. Althea shielded her eyes with one hand, relieved that the confrontation hadn't gone further. But as the motorcycles roared away, Brix turned back and pointed 2 fingers at his eyes. Then at Althea. It was a clear warning. "We're watching you." The guard rushed over to Althea, apologizing profusely for his lack of intervention. She patted his shoulder reassuringly. "You did what you could without getting hurt," she said. "Sometimes that's the best we can manage." Yet as she climbed into her car, Althea's mind buzzed with memories from long ago, times when she had been forced to defend herself and others. She realized that confrontation was inevitable if the Iron Thunder continued their reign of terror. She just prayed the next time wouldn't be worse. News spread quickly about the parking lot incident. By evening, neighbors were knocking on Althea's door to check on her. She received phone calls from church friends offering prayers and concerns. In the face of so much community support, Althea felt touched, yet she also sensed their trembling anxiety. It's only a matter of time before they do. "Worse," said Mrs. Whitfield, Althea's neighbor from across the street. "I've been hearing about break-ins in the next county over Pastor Morris from Grace and Glory." Baptist insisted on driving Althea to church from now on, even though she lived just 3 blocks away. "We can't let them harass you like that," he told her firmly. Althea gently declined, Reverend. "I appreciate the concern, but I won't hide in my own home. I've lived through worse times. I have faith we'll endure this." But inside her cozy bungalow, Althea prepared in small, subtle ways. She found herself checking the locks more often, peering out the windows at night. She dusted off some old training notes from decades past, simple martial arts routines that improved balance and reflexes. In the corner of her closet lay a box of items from her activist days, including a worn-out black belt and a set of old practice weapons. She never thought she'd need them again. One evening after watering her roses, she walked to her living room and gently lowered herself onto a padded stool. With a deep breath, she began a series of slow, deliberate movements, an exercise routine based on judo kata. The motions felt foreign at first. Her hips creaked, her shoulders ached, but muscle memory was a powerful thing, returning in the subtle rotations of her wrists and the alignment of her feet. By the end of her routine, sweat glistened on Althea's brow. Her heart beat quickly, but she felt an old spark of confidence rekindle. Sometimes the best way to combat fear was by remembering your own strength. She reflected on the past. The movements brought back images of protest lines, of holding hands and singing, "We shall overcome," while troopers threatened them with clubs and dogs. She remembered the darkest nights, when cross-burnings ignited terror in black communities across the South. Through it all, she had never crumbled. She had prayed, organized, and prepared. That night, Althea turned off her living room light and sat on her porch with a cup of chamomile tea. She stared at the moonlit street, where the flickering lamppost cast shifting shadows on the pavement. A single thought kept looping through her mind. You've handled worse before. You'll handle this too. It was barely noon on a sultry Saturday, when the iron thunder returned to the neighborhood engines roaring like thunderclouds. This time, they didn't just pass through. They stopped in front of the local Buffalo Wild Wings, revved their bikes, and parked them in a row as if they owned the place. Patrons inside the restaurant tensed up. Some quietly finished their meals in a hurry, settling bills with shaking hands. Fang led his crew into the place, demanding pitchers of beer. The manager, a middle-aged man named Terence, contemplated calling the police, but the menacing aura of the gang stopped him. People whispered to each other, shooting wary glances. After draining several pitchers, Fang began to brag about their encounter with the old lady from the grocery store. "You should have seen her face," he said loudly, though in truth, Althea's expression had been more measured than frightened. His gang howled in laughter, embellishing the story to make themselves look more intimidating. At that moment, a local mechanic named Roy, who had occasionally fixed Althea's sedan for free, was seated at the bar. Roy had always respected Althea's generosity and quiet strength. Hearing the gang insult her made his blood boil. Tentatively he spoke up. "Hey fellas, that woman's been part of this community for longer than most of us have been alive. Why pick on someone who's done nothing to you?" The laughter died down. Fang turned to Roy. "Who do you think you are?" Roy swallowed hard, but a spark of anger compelled him to stand his ground. "Name's Roy. I've got no quarrel with you, but I won't let you talk about her like that." A hush fell across the restaurant. One of the gang members, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, slammed his fist on the bar. "You got a death wish." Roy's knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of his stool. "We don't need trouble here. That lady is good people. She never hurt anyone. Isn't there someone else you can pick on?" Fang slowly slid off his seat, the bar stool screeching against the floor. He towered over Roy. "We'll pick on whoever we want. Maybe it's you. Next hero." Sensing the explosion about to occur, Terence, the manager, rushed over, pleading with Roy to drop it. Roy finally relented, muttering under his breath as he walked out of the restaurant, heart pounding. The gang burst into raucous laughter again. They enjoyed the fear, the intimidation. If there was a line they wouldn't cross, no one had found it yet. And Althea's name had now been publicly ridiculed, fueling a sense of injustice among those who cared about her. Outside, Roy exhaled shakily, furious, but resigned to protect his wife and kids. He couldn't risk going to jail or ending up battered in a hospital. Still, he vowed to check on Althea to make sure she knew people cared about her safety. Word of the Buffalo Wild Wings confrontation spread quickly, Roy told his wife, who told her best friend, who told the church ladies. And soon half the neighborhood knew the Iron Thunder was mocking Althea by name. A small but determined group of neighbors decided they'd had enough. They quietly organized a meeting in the church basement, away from prying eyes, where they could discuss how to respond. Pastor Morris facilitated. "We can't have vigilante justice," Pastor Morris said, his voice echoing in the dimly lit space. "But we also can't stand by while they terrorize our streets." Roy stepped forward. "We have to stand together. Show them we aren't easy targets, Mrs." Whitfield added, "Maybe we can form a neighborhood. Watch, keep our phones ready to call the police if they show up." Althea, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "A watch is a good idea, but we need to be cautious. They outnumber us, and they may be carrying more than just bravado. We should remain lawful, but also prepared." A hush fell as people looked at Althea, recalling that even though she was in her 70s, she had an air of calm authority. One neighbor asked, "What do you suggest, Miss Althea?" She took a moment before replying, measuring her words. "We can support each other. Make sure no one stands alone when they appear. If we see them harassing someone, approach as a group peacefully, but in unity. Bullies thrive on isolating their victims." The assembly murmured in agreement. Another man. Mr. Daniels said, "I'll take the morning shift. I work from home anyway. I can keep an eye on the main street from my front porch." A system of text messaging was proposed, a phone tree for the older folks who didn't text. The plan was simple. If the Iron Thunder rolled in, someone would send out an alert so people could gather safely. They wanted to create a visible sign of solidarity, an unmistakable message that the town wasn't a doormat. As the meeting wrapped up, Althea lingered behind Pastor Morris, offered her a worried glance. "Are you all right? I know you're not one to scare easily, but these are dangerous people." She patted his hand. "I'm fine, Reverend. Thank you for your concern, you know," he said softly. "I've heard stories about your past. Some of the older congregation members whispered about how you used to be quite active." Althea let out a gentle laugh, remembering those tales. "That was a lifetime ago, but I've still got some fight left in me, if push comes to shove." Pastor Morris nodded, relief and reverence in his eyes. "We're blessed to have you in our corner." Althea little did he know how deep that well of strength ran, and how soon it would be tested. 2 weeks passed without a major incident. The neighborhood watch plan seemed effective. A few times the gang rode through, but found themselves observed by clusters of people standing on porches with phones in hand. It seemed to dampen the bikers' enthusiasm for random cruelty. But the Iron Thunder was not about to concede. One Saturday afternoon, children were playing in the local park swing sets, squeaking a kickball game in progress near the picnic tables. Althea often liked to walk a lap or two around the park's paved path for exercise. She was there that day, greeting parents and tossing a few kind words to the kids. Just then, the guttural roar of motorcycle engines disturbed the scene. 3 of the gang members, Bricks, the woman with the rattlesnake patch. Her name was Dahlia, and a newly recruited younger biker named Crow rode onto the grass, ignoring the no motor vehicles sign. Parents rushed to gather their children in alarm. Althea felt a tightening in her chest. They're picking a place with children. She thought, anger stirring in her gut. This was beyond intimidation. It was borderline monstrous. Bricks cut the engine first. He scanned the park until his gaze landed on Althea. A cruel grin spread across his face. Well, what a coincidence. You out for a little stroll, Granny?" Nearby, some neighbors were already fidgeting with their phones. Ready to send out the alert, Althea offered the children a reassuring nod, silently signaling them to keep their distance. Dahlia dismounted her bike, swaggering over. She wore fingerless gloves and had a snake tattoo coiling around her left arm. "This your territory, old lady. You and your rose-planting friends gonna protect the kiddos." Althea kept her composure. "There's no need for trouble. This park is open to everyone. But maybe you could park your bikes over there, on the street. The children are playing." Crow snorted, looking at Dahlia for approval. "She's telling you what to do," he said, stoking the fire. Dahlia walked closer to Althea, close enough that Althea could smell the faint stench of stale smoke. "You think you can order us around?" Althea steadied herself, discreetly shifting her stance. She was well aware that if the biker tried anything physical, she had the training to respond, but that risked a full escalation. "I'm requesting some courtesy for the children's sake." The word courtesy made Dahlia laugh a harsh, mocking cackle. "Courtesy, we don't do courtesy." By now, Roy and a handful of neighbors had converged at the park entrance, phones in hand. Roy shouted, "Leave her alone. Police are on the way." Bricks turned around and spat on the ground. Tattletales. But the presence of multiple witnesses made him cautious. This wasn't the easy intimidation scenario they thrived on. Dahlia, however, wasn't done. She took one more step toward Althea. "Why do you keep that cane, Grandma? You actually need it, or is it just for show?" She reached out to grab it, and Althea instinctively pulled back. That was the moment, 1 second of crossing an invisible line, Dahlia grabbed for the cane again. But Althea moved with surprising grace. She pivoted on her left foot, twisting her body just enough to keep the cane out of Dahlia's grasp. A subtle motion, but enough to make Dahlia stumble forward. The onlookers gasped. Dahlia, fueled by embarrassment, snarled and lunged again. This time, Althea used a simple circular motion she recalled from her old training. She let Dahlia's momentum carry her forward while guiding her arm away. Dahlia lost her balance, stumbling to the ground with a thud. For a split second, the entire park fell silent. Parents shielded their children's eyes, unsure if this was about to turn violent. Brick snarled and rushed toward Althea, who stepped back. Kane at the ready, Roy and several other neighbors ran forward to form a protective line. Dahlia got to her feet, face red with fury. "You'll pay for that!" The faint sound of a siren in the distance caught everyone's attention. Bricks let out a frustrated growl. "Cops!" He shot Dahlia and Crow a glare. "We're leaving now." Dahlia pointed a trembling finger at Althea. "This isn't over." She turned on her heel and mounted her bike, revving it angrily. The trio sped off, leaving behind a swirl of dirt and frightened faces. Roy, breathless, approached Althea. "Are you okay, Miss Althea? You just—" Althea released a tension-filled breath. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she managed a measured nod. "I'm fine." Roy, just a little shaken. In truth, she was more concerned about the escalation. She knew that once bullies were embarrassed, especially in public, they often returned with a vengeance. And sure enough, the seeds of a much larger confrontation had been planted that day in the park. After the incident at the park, gossip spread like wildfire. Tales of how Althea had effortlessly evaded Dahlia's attack morphed into ever more dramatic versions. Some claimed Althea had tossed Dahlia through the air like a rag doll. Others insisted she disarmed her of a hidden knife. None of it was exactly true, but the core fact remained. Althea wasn't just a helpless old lady. This new reputation caught people's attention, especially those who had known Althea for years, but never suspected she had such capabilities. Some chalked it up to old folks' cunning, but a few started digging into her past out of curiosity. A local historian, Mr. Evans, who was writing a book about civil rights activism in Birmingham, discovered photographs from the 1960s. He found a few showing a young woman bearing an uncanny resemblance to Althea, performing self-defense moves during a training session for protesters. She wore a determined expression, fluidly flipping a sparring partner twice her size. Mr. Evans quietly mentioned it to Pastor Morris, who, equally surprised, brought it up to Althea one afternoon. "Is this you?" asked the pastor gently, offering her the black and white photograph. Althea peered at it, lips pursed in a wistful smile. "Yes, that's me. I was part of a small group that learned to defend ourselves back in the day. We were non-violent in our protests, but we also understood the dangers we faced." Pastor Morris nodded respect, shining in his eyes. "You never really talk about it," she shrugged. "The times were so tumultuous. We didn't do it for glory. We did it because we had to. We wanted to protect our families." After the marches ended and legislation changed, I went on with my life. Married James, worked at NASA, raised a family. That part of me just stayed in the past. The pastor placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "Well, that training may still prove beneficial. Now, the congregation is worried. We're not encouraging violence, but we want you to be safe." Althea smiled, touched by the concern. "I appreciate it, Reverend. Let's just hope it doesn't come to that." Little did they know, the Iron Thunder were holding their own meeting at a dilapidated barn on the outskirts of town. Fang sat in the center, fuming over what he heard happened in the park. Dahlia's pride had been deeply wounded, and that was no small matter in a gang that valued fearlessness above all else. "She embarrassed me in front of kids." Dahlia spat. "We can't let her get away with that. She's got to learn a lesson." Fang eyed Dahlia coolly. "We will, but we'll do it on our terms. We can't let the cops lock us up over some old lady. We need a plan." Bricks chimed in. "That community is banding together. Makes it hard to pick them off one by one." Fang's lip curled into a sneer. "Then we find a way to pull them apart. We'll start with her. We'll show them there's no point in trying to resist." He turned to Dahlia. "You want your payback? Fine. But do it smart. No witnesses, no camera phones. We find a place or a time when she's alone." Dahlia nodded, a gleam of vengeance in her eyes. The rest of the gang exchanged a knowing look. Something big was brewing, and the rest of the neighborhood was just starting to realize how high the stakes could get. The final straw arrived one hot afternoon when Althea was on her usual grocery run. She had purchased a few basics and treated herself to a small arrangement of gardenias. That sweet, floral scent brought her comfort, reminding her of better days. As she walked toward her car, she noticed a single motorcycle parked beside her sedan. It was black and silver, emblazoned with the Iron Thunder logo. She felt her stomach clench. She glanced around the lot. It was relatively empty. No onlookers to intervene, and no security guard in sight. Suddenly, Dahlia stepped out from behind a large pickup truck, arms folded, face set in a wrathful glare. "Been looking for you," she said. Althea's pulse quickened. She kept her expression neutral. "I'm just heading home, not looking for trouble." Dahlia smirked. "Oh, but trouble's looking for you, old lady." Althea took a measured step back, her hand tightening on her cane. "Let's not do this. We can still walk away." Dahlia's face contorted with fury. "Not after you made a fool of me in front of half the neighborhood." Before Althea could respond, Dahlia lunged, swinging a chain she'd been hiding behind her back. Althea managed to sidestep Kane, raised defensively. The chain whooshed through the air, narrowly missing her shoulder. Adrenaline coursed through Althea's veins. She had trained for such scenarios years ago, but never imagined she'd face them again at this stage of her life. Still, her instincts took over. She used her cane to deflect Dahlia's next swing. The metallic clang echoed through the empty lot. The smaller grocery items spilled from Althea's bag, rolling across the asphalt. She tried to maneuver around the bikes, seeking an open escape path, but Dahlia quickly blocked her. Another vicious swing with the chain. A glancing blow struck Althea's forearm, sending a jolt of pain through her. She hissed, stepping back. Dahlia pressed the advantage, spurred on by the taste of blood. Another swing. But this time, Althea ducked low, hooking Dahlia's ankle with her cane. Dahlia stumbled arms, flailing, and crashed onto the pavement. The chain clattered. For a moment, they were both breathing heavily. Althea clutched her bruised arm, wincing. Dahlia snarled, propping herself up. "You old witch! I'm gonna—" Suddenly, a voice boomed from behind. That's enough, Roy and two other neighbors, alerted by a text that Althea had gone shopping alone, came barreling across the lot. One man aimed his phone camera at Dahlia, recording everything. Dahlia cursed under her breath, realizing the situation. Roy stood between Althea and Dahlia, fists clenched. "It's over. We've got this on video. Either leave or the cops will handle you." Dahlia hesitated. Glancing at her bike, she scrambled to her feet, glaring at Althea with unbridled hatred. "You're going to regret this. You and your little rescue squad." She snatched up her chain and ran to her motorcycle, roaring off in a cloud of exhaust. Althea almost collapsed from relief. Adrenaline spent, Roy and the others helped her steady. Her forearm throbbed, and she saw a dark bruise forming. She shook her head in disbelief at how far this had gone. Roy exhaled shakily. "Miss Althea, are you okay? We need to get you home. Or maybe a hospital." Althea, trembling, nodded. "I'm a bit rattled, but I'll be fine. Let's file a police report this time. We can't let them keep doing this." The men agreed, ushering Althea into her car. One neighbor drove, while Roy followed behind, on foot. As they left the parking lot, Althea fought to calm her racing heart. She knew it was a temporary reprieve. The Iron Thunder wouldn't let this go quietly, but the tide was turning. The gang's cruelty was laid bare, captured on video. One way or another, the final reckoning was fast approaching. The video footage taken by Althea's neighbors quickly spread through the local community's social media. Although the police took a statement and said they'd look into it, the gang had slipped away yet again. Dahlia went into hiding for a few days, presumably letting the heat die down. In the meantime, the town rallied around Althea. People dropped off meals offered to run errands for her and volunteered to escort her anywhere she needed to go. Though deeply grateful, Althea felt conflicted. She appreciated the outpouring of care, but she also didn't want to put anyone else in danger. Fang, infuriated by Dahlia's public embarrassment, tightened his grip on the gang. He demanded that no one go near Althea unless they had a foolproof plan. "We're not amateurs," he barked at Dahlia, who bristled under his scolding. "Our next move has to remind this town who we are." Drake Fang Merriman was cunning enough to realize that random attacks had become too risky. The presence of videos and neighborhood watch groups thwarted their usual tactics of harassment. But he also knew fear was a weapon they still commanded. One evening, a meeting at the town hall was called. The mayor police chief and several city council members addressed the growing threat of the Iron Thunder news cameras from a local TV station. WVTM 13 were present, finally giving the community a broader platform to expose their plight. Althea, reluctant but resolute, attended. She sat near the front, flanked by Roy and Pastor Morris. Emotions ran high, with residents demanding stricter policing and more patrols. The police chief explained they lacked resources, and the mayor promised to request state assistance. Then Althea spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "We must show them we stand together, and we won't be intimidated. This gang feeds on fear. If we refuse to live in fear, we cut off their power. We can do that by watching out for each other, reporting everything and refusing to let them isolate us." Her words struck a chord. Applause filled the hall. A reporter approached Althea after the meeting, asking if she would share her story publicly. She hesitated. Exposure could make her even more of a target, but she decided that shining a light on bullies was necessary. The following evening, a short segment aired on WVTM 13. Althea was interviewed in her garden, standing tall among her roses, telling how the gang threatened a peaceful community. Although she never boasted of her skills, her dignity and quiet resolve shone through. That broadcast ignited further support. Donations poured into a local fund to help victims of Iron Thunder harassment. Neighborhood watch groups in the surrounding counties began to network with Althea's community. The gang, once operating in shadows, found itself under a very bright spotlight. Still, no one doubted that the Iron Thunder might retaliate. The question remained, how and when summer heat peaked with temperatures sweltering in the high 90s, the oppressive humidity made daily errands a test of endurance. For a few tense weeks, the Iron Thunder seemed to lay low. Some speculated they'd moved on, perhaps to a less guarded town. Others warned that bullies rarely vanish without a final show of force. Althea kept up her routines, but remained hyper-vigilant. She resumed her gentle self-defense drills at home, stretching carefully each morning. Her bruised arm had mostly healed, leaving a faint reminder of Dahlia's chain. Occasionally, Althea caught sight of a lone motorcyclist wearing a black leather vest with the Iron Thunder emblem. They'd pass by her street, slow down in front of her house, then ride off. She refused to be rattled, but the message was clear. They hadn't forgotten. One sweltering Thursday afternoon, Althea was taking out her trash when she noticed a young man peering at her over the fence. He wore a bandana around his head, a look of apprehension in his eyes. She recognized him from a distance. He was known as Crow, the newest member of the Iron Thunder. Clutching her cane, she cautiously approached the fence. "Need something?" she asked. Crow shifted uncomfortably. I'm not here to hurt you." Suspicion flared within Althea. "Then why are you here?" He glanced around, as if expecting an ambush. Look, Dahlia's got a vendetta against you. Fang wants to make an example of you, especially after you went on the news." Althea's eyes narrowed. "Why are you telling me this?" He licked his lips nervously. "I didn't sign up for this. I thought the Iron Thunder was about brotherhood being free on the road. But all I see is fear and hate." Althea sensed a shred of sincerity in his voice. Still, she was wary. "So what do you plan to do?" "I'm leaving," Crow whispered. "I'm done." "But I wanted to warn you. They're planning something big. Tomorrow night at the old rail yard near 9th Street. They want you to come. They're talking about forcing you there somehow, or cornering you. I don't know the details, but it's not good." Althea's stomach twisted. "Why are you telling me this at the risk of your own safety?" Crow swallowed. "You're an old lady. I don't care what they say. You don't deserve to get hurt. Not for their pride. I'm leaving town. Just be careful." Before Althea could respond, Crow took off, disappearing down the alley. A swirl of conflicting thoughts raged in her mind. Was this a trap designed to lure her out? Or was he genuinely repentant? Either way, a final confrontation seemed imminent. Althea trembled at the thought, but she knew she couldn't ignore the warning. That evening she called Roy Pastor Morris and a few key neighbors to inform them. They debated contacting the police, but recent history told them the gang was crafty at evading a direct sting. A plan began to take shape. If the Iron Thunder wanted a showdown, the community wouldn't let Althea face it alone, but they had to be strategic. We will not wage war, Althea thought, but we must be prepared to defend ourselves. The following day crawled by. Every hour felt stretched thin by anxiety. By dusk, a group of neighbors had gathered in a discreet location near the abandoned rail yard on 9th Street. Rusted train cars, overgrown weeds, and broken tracks made the place a favorite for illicit activities, gangs, graffiti artists, and the occasional vagrant seeking shelter. Althea stood amidst her supporters, Roy, Mrs. Whitfield, Pastor Morris, Mr. Daniels, and a handful of others who dared to show up. They wore determined faces, some holding phones, others carrying flashlights. A few had pepper spray or makeshift defensive tools. They'd informed the police of a possible confrontation, but there was no guarantee officers would arrive in time or in sufficient numbers. Sure enough, at 9 p.m. sharp, the thunderous growl of motorcycles approached. Headlights pierced the darkness. 6 bikes in total, Fang leading with Dahlia Bricks and 3 other men flanking him. The Iron Thunder members dismounted, forming an intimidating line. Fang's eyes locked onto Althea, a grin twisting his face. "Well, well," Fang said. "Brought your little army." Pastor Morris stepped forward. "We're here to stand with her. We won't let you harm her." Dahlia scoffed. "This is a joke. You all think you can stop us with some phone cameras." Althea took a deep breath, then stepped ahead of the pastor. Her voice was steady. "We're not here to fight. We want you to leave our town in peace." Fang chuckled low and menacing. "You see, that's the thing, Granny. You had to go on TV, make us look weak. Now we have to show everyone. We're not pushovers." He nodded to Bricks, who cracked his knuckles. Eyes scanning the group for a potential assault, Dahlia uncoiled a chain from her waist, glaring at Althea. The tension was suffocating. Just then, Roy broke the silence. "You might scare us, but we're still here. We won't let you run us off anymore." Fang's grin vanished, replaced by a snarl. "Wrong move." He pointed at Althea. "We're settling this right now. You and me." Althea's heart hammered in her chest. She glanced at her neighbors, recalling all their support, their unwavering faith in her. She stepped forward, cane in hand. If that's what it takes to end this. The air crackled with anticipation. Fang handed his jacket to Dahlia, rolling his shoulders like a prize fighter entering a ring. Althea gripped her cane, mentally reviewing every defensive stance she remembered. Fang lunged, aiming to snatch the cane away. Althea stepped aside, swatting his hand with a quick flick of her wrist. He growled in surprise. She was faster than expected. The group of neighbors formed a wide circle, phones recording but also ready to intervene if Fang's gang joined in. Fang tried another angle, feinting, left then darting right. Althea pivoted, using the cane to parry him away. Her footwork was unsteady compared to her youth, but her training guided each motion. She sidestepped his grappling attempts, focusing on deflection rather than confrontation. Infuriated, Fang charged straight at her arms, outstretched to tackle Althea, braced herself, hooking her cane around his forearm. With a twist and a bit of momentum, she diverted his attack, causing him to stumble off balance. He landed hard on one knee, cursing. Onlookers gasped. Dahlia and Bricks looked ready to jump in, but Fang barked. No. He didn't want help. His pride demanded he handle this old woman alone. He stood up, face flushed with humiliation. This time he threw a wild punch. Althea couldn't fully dodge, and his fist glanced her shoulder, sending a shockwave of pain through her body. She staggered, clutching her cane. In that moment of weakness, Fang rushed again, grabbing hold of her arm. He wrenched the cane away, tossing it aside. The neighbors cried out, but Althea didn't panic. She recalled an old judo technique, use an opponent's momentum against them. As Fang tried to twist her arm behind her back, she dropped her center of gravity, turning sharply. She slipped under his grasp, and with a practiced motion, she flipped Fang over her hip. He crashed onto the gravel with a stunned groan. A hush fell. Even the members of the Iron Thunder stared in disbelief. Fang, the menacing leader, had just been knocked flat by a 73-year-old woman. Phones captured every second. The next few moments felt like slow motion. Fang struggled to his feet, chest-heaving, eyes full of fury. But before he could charge again, the wail of sirens split the night. Red and blue lights flickered across the scene. The police had arrived, this time in force. 4 squad cars rolled in, officers jumping out and ordering everyone to freeze on the ground. The officers shouted, guns drawn at the gang members. The neighbors moved aside, hands raised peacefully, cooperating fully, Fang's face twisted from rage to dread. Dahlia and Brix exchanged frantic glances. Caught in the act, no escape plan this time, with weapons on them. The Iron Thunder members had no choice but to comply. They dropped to their knees, hands behind their heads. Althea was breathing hard, her shoulder aching fiercely. She resisted the urge to slump, mustering the last ounce of her dignity to remain upright. It was over. The gang had been bested not just by Althea's hidden strength, but by a unified community, determined to uphold justice. Within minutes, the rail yard was filled with flashing lights, curious onlookers, and the hum of police radios. Officers handcuffed Fang, Dahlia, Brix, and the others searching them for contraband. Several knives, a pistol, and Dahlia's chain were recovered. Althea, trembling from adrenaline and pain, leaned on Roy, who guided her gently to a waiting ambulance. A paramedic checked her vitals, recommending a hospital visit for her bruised shoulder. Althea, stoic, agreed, though she insisted on giving a statement first. Onlookers, neighbors, local news reporters converged around the group. Cameras rolled as officers escorted the gang members into squad cars. This was the hard karma that had been brewing all along. The Iron Thunder's reign of intimidation had come crashing down under the weight of their own arrogance, community unity, and Althea's surprising martial prowess. The next day's headlines in the local paper, the Birmingham Times, read, "Community Hero, Senior Citizen and Neighbors Help Take Down Notorious Biker Gang." The accompanying article detailed the months of terror culminating in the final showdown. Althea's photograph appeared beneath the headline. Though she felt a bit embarrassed at the spotlight, she understood its importance. Dahlia, Brix, and the rest faced multiple charges: assault, illegal weapons possession, and more. Fang's prior record meant he would likely face a lengthy sentence. Investigations uncovered the gang's broader network, implicating them in thefts, intimidations, and even suspected hate crimes. Federal authorities hinted at further charges if they found evidence of organized interstate activity. In the days that followed, the community breathed a collective sigh of relief. Children played in the park without fear. Roy's garage started seeing more business, supported by grateful locals who viewed him as a hero for standing by Althea. Mrs. Whitfield baked an endless supply of pies to celebrate the gang's downfall. Althea spent a couple of nights in the hospital for observation, her bruises healing with rest and physical therapy. Nurses and doctors treated her like a celebrity. "You're the lady who took down that biker gang," they exclaimed. Althea graciously downplayed her role, praising the neighbors and the police. When she finally returned home, Pastor Morris greeted her with a bouquet of roses on behalf of the congregation. Neighbors lined the sidewalk to clap and cheer as she made her way to her front porch. Though she was moved by the gesture, she also felt a pang of sorrow, knowing that violence had again been a necessary measure to secure peace. Still, the city moved forward. The mayor honored Althea Roy and Pastor Morris at a small ceremony, giving them commendations for bravery and civic responsibility. Althea accepted it with the same quiet humility she had shown all her life. Behind the scenes, life began to normalize. The Iron Thunder was no more disbanded, disgraced, and behind bars. As news of Althea's story spread, it carried a lesson in resilience, reminding the entire region that even the seemingly powerless could rise against tyranny when united in purpose. Perhaps the greatest reward for Althea was seeing her community unafraid once again. Families lingered outside in the evenings, music played from porches, and children rode bikes freely. Peace had returned, earned through solidarity, and an old woman's timeless courage. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of courage, unity, and the surprising power hidden within each of us. Althea's story reminds us that, no matter our age or circumstance, our strength can reveal itself when we stand up against injustice. From a helpless target, she became the guiding force that inspired her entire community to take action. And in doing so, she showed a biker gang and the world that real power isn't about intimidation or brute force. It's about standing firmly for what's right. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends who need a reminder of hope, and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting tales. Together, let's keep these stories alive, shining a light on the resilience and kindness that can transform our communities every day. Thank you for watching.